Okay, let's just jump right into it. So a bill goes through Parliament. It gets debated, voted on, and finally it passes. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, here's the thing. There's this fascinating little legal puzzle right at the very end of that whole process. Just because a bill gets passed, it doesn't always mean it's actually, well, the law of the land. Not yet, anyway.
So here's a question for you. When the Governor General gives that final formal nod, what's called Royal Assent, you'd think that new act is on, right? That it's active immediately. But nope, that's not always how it works. An act can actually exist in this kind of legal limbo. It's fully approved, but it's not legally binding just yet. So how in the world do you know when a law is actually switched on?
To figure this out, we're going to need a case file. So let's use a real-world example, a recent amendment to Canada's Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. The big question is, what is the exact date this change actually takes effect? This is the mystery we're going to solve together.
To find our answer, first, we need to understand that there isn't just one way for a law to come to life. In Canadian federal law, there are really three main paths a new rule can take to go from being text on a page to having real legal power.
Think of it like this. First, you've got the default path, where the law just starts the moment it gets royal assent. Simple. Then there's the timer, where the law itself says, hey, I'm going to turn on at this specific future date. And finally, you've got the green light, where the government gets to decide exactly when to flip the switch. That last one has a fancy name, proclamation.
So let's start with the default. If an act doesn't say anything at all about when it starts, it automatically comes into force on the day it receives royal assent. This is that final stamp of approval, and for a lot of laws, it's both the finish line and the starting gun, all in one.
Now, why would a government not want a law to start right away? Well, that's where proclamation comes in, and it's all about one word, flexibility. I mean, imagine a really complex new law gets passed. The government might need some time to get ready. Print new forms, train all the staff, or update their computer systems. Proclamation lets them get all their ducks in a row before the law officially kicks in.
So how does the government actually give that green light? Well, they use a special legal tool called an order in council, or you'll often see it as just OIC. It's basically a formal decision made by the Governor General, but on the advice of the federal cabinet. So, whenever you hear that a law will be proclaimed into force, it just means everybody's waiting for one of these OICs to be issued.
All right, now that we know the three ways a law can get switched on, how do we, as legal detectives, figure out which path our specific amendment took? We just need the right tools. And the good news is, they're all out there for anyone to use.
Every detective needs a toolkit, right? Ours has three essential items. First, there's Legis Info from the Parliament of Canada. Then, we have the Table of Public Statutes, which is from the Department of Justice. And the final piece of our puzzle comes from the official government newspaper, the Canada Gazette. Each one gives us a critical clue.
Our first stop is always Legis Info. Think of this database as the bill's biography. It tracks its entire journey through Parliament. But for us, its most important job is telling us the exact date a bill got royal assent. That helps us either confirm or rule out that first, most common way a law comes into force.
Next up is the Table of Public Statutes. And honestly, this thing is a game changer. It's a master list of all the federal acts, and it tracks every single amendment ever made to them. But the most important part for us is a column usually labeled CIF. That stands for coming into force. This is where we are going to find our biggest clues.
And finally, we have the Canada Gazette, specifically Part 2. This is the government's official record. If a law is brought into force by proclamation, that order in council we talked about has to be published here. It's the final, citable proof we need to officially close our case.
Okay, we have our case file. We have our detective kit. It's time to put it all together and solve the mystery of our Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act amendment. Let's just follow the evidence, step by step.
So, let's get back to it. Is our amendment to the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act in force right now? Well, the first thing we do is actually check the text of the new law itself. In this particular case, its coming into force section says it will be activated by proclamation. So, right away, that tells us the royal assent date isn't our answer. Time to pull out our second tool.
So we open up the Table of Public Statutes, and we look up the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. We scroll down through the amendments until we find our specific chapter and section. We look across to that CIF column, and there it is, our clue. It gives us a date, but it also gives us a reference, CSI 2025-15.
Okay, so what does that little code mean? We already know CIF stands for coming into force.
The new clue, SI, stands for statutory instrument. Now remember that order in council, or OIC, we talked about a minute ago? Well, an OIC is just a specific type of statutory instrument. So this little SI code is basically a breadcrumb, leading us right to the proof.
The code SI/2025-15 is a specific registration number. It tells us we are looking for the 15th statutory instrument registered in the year 2025, and the one place we are guaranteed to find it published is in our third and final tool, the Canada Gazette.
So we head over to the Canada Gazette website, we search for that SI number, and boom, up pops the official order in council. And it states, in very clear legal language, that the Governor General has fixed March 1st, 2025 as the day that our amendment officially comes into force. And just like that, we have our answer. Case closed.
So we solved the puzzle, which is great. But why does all this detective work actually matter so much? Well, it's because knowing that enforced date is the absolute key to understanding the difference between the law as it was written and the law as it actually exists today.
You see, when you look up an act online, you're almost always looking at a consolidated version. That means it's the original act, but with all the later in-force amendments rolled right into the text. The source law is the original text. It's more like a historical document now. The consolidated law is the version we all have to follow. And you just can't have an accurate consolidated law without knowing exactly which amendments are switched on.
And that is why this whole process is so vital. Without confirming that coming into force date, you could be basing really important decisions, or your business, or even legal advice on a version of the law that's out of date, or maybe on a new section that isn't even law yet. It's the difference between looking at a blueprint and looking at the actual finished building.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've seen how to find the date, sure, but what happens if someone gets it wrong? What are the actual real-world consequences for a business or for you that acts on a new law before its official start date? It's just a good reminder that in the world of law, timing isn't just important, it is absolutely everything.